for all coming out this evening. If you would take just a moment and please silence your cell phones. Thank you. My name is Sherry Burris, and I am from Wytheville County. What we're talking about tonight is very important to me. When we started talking with so many of our colleagues and friends across the community, we realized there are so many different forms of data centers and so many different approaches of how cities, counties, and towns deal with their encroachment. We just thought it was so important for us to have a balanced dialogue about positive, neutral, and negative impacts that data centers and their centered development can have in our communities, very much like nuclear and solar. The last thing that any community needs is to have their landscape permanently changed. Also, their local economics of energy and water usage and tax revenues, how do they balance? Do they balance? What is the cost-benefit analysis of these changes? And as they come into the community after community of our huge region. With so many wonderful resources, how can we reassure that our population is benefiting from this? We're not suffering from yet another extraction of an industry that will not care about a perspective on how they operate in our communities, in our towns, in our farms, and in our parks. Tonight we're here to learn about each other's experiences and each other's perspectives, not to argue, but to display examples and neutral, negative experiences of how communities respond and how can labor and their wonderful experience of organizing work together to make sure that we're bringing benefits to our communities, not just liabilities. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Alexa Casey, and let's get this dialogue to begin.
Thank you all for coming tonight. So many friendly, wonderful faces. I'm excited for what we are about to talk about tonight. But before we do that, I just wanted to share with you a profound honor to dedicate our proceedings to a man whose life and work embodied the very essence of advocacy, justice, and unwavering dedication. Herbert Raymond Zalapani, also referred to as Pineapple because he was from Hawaii. So Herbert was born in Hawaii in 1930 with a rich heritage. His mother was Hawaiian and Portuguese, and his father was a Ukrainian. When he was 10 years old, he moved to Detroit, Michigan, and he became a Marine and went back to Hawaii for a bit. And then he came back to Detroit because that was his home and his heart, where his heart was. He started as a tool and die maker in the Chrysler plant, and then he became the president of the union. His career at the shop of tool and die was one that he cherished and also got him attention to work as an organizer for the UAW. He spent 25 years as an organizer and a negotiator for the UAW. It was a position that he held for quite some time. And I remember as a little girl, we went to a lot of those picnics. Walter Reuther was part of that at some point. Also, I remember Doug Frazier. I remember just some of those folks when I was a little girl. He was a skilled negotiator. That would be an understatement to say that. He was a force of nature. At his funeral, the profound impact that he had on everybody, and I just gave away that he was my dad, but anyway, so this is my dad. That was gonna come in later, and then I realized, you guys know, this is my dad. So basically, I'll just go not on script, so it'll be easier, because I really have a hard time with reading scripts. So I would say, my dad was a force. and he really was a force. And I remember at the funeral, I had a number of people, we loved your dad, but boy, we were scared anytime he came. Whenever we were negotiating, he came in, we're like, oh, it's Herb. So they knew that they were gonna lose something when they came in, because he was a really strong advocate, really strong for the workers that he represented. And so this dedication, this issue is the issue of our times. And so being able to pull the unions, for all representatives to come and talk about what's happening, and also looking at the AI data centers, it just seemed like a great opportunity. So I wanted to just dedicate this event to him and to all the union fighters that exist. And thank you all of you for coming here tonight. It's been wonderful. All right, okay. So I want to now introduce Dirk Moore, who will be our moderator for the night. He has a couple of very, very exciting accolades that I want to kind of run through. So he's first the director of the Appalachian Center at Emory and Henry. He is also part of the town council at Glade Spring. He teaches civic innovation, which is a really interesting thing, which we probably need to have another talk on that whole issue. And then he also has a radio show with WEHC and WISE. And the name of the show is Together We Get There. And it addresses economic and community development in the Southwest Virginia. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for being here. So Dirk, we'll leave this over to you.
Thank you all for letting me be a part of this. I'm really so impressed by the fact that we're having a forum over this issue and the way that it's being developed, to be organic in our discussion and also to be objective as we're working together to look at this challenge and to face it together and to hopefully have a solution that works for all. I want to also, though, since we're talking about forces, point your attention in the direction of Mike McGurr. Mike is famous for sort of launching these kinds of discussions and then stepping back and letting them happen. But whenever I have a lectern, I don't let that happen, because Mike is a force. He is a force for good. He is really trying to. He hates this, of course, when I do this. I work with him on other issues. He and I are attached at the hip, working on housing in Southwest Virginia and East Tennessee. We've been in discussions about everything from agriculture to the environment to how to eliminate a media desert in this area. And so Mike has come to this region from afar, but we're so blessed to have him, because he, more than most people that I know, have really brought real energy and a determination to make good change. So again, applaud that man and thank him. The lay of this program really speaks to, I think, the approach that he pursues. That's one of helping you to get information from qualified and good people. I'm glad that we have union people here. I feel like these kinds of forums are dedicated to sort of everyday people, to have everyday people understand issues, but also to exercise their leadership in that. And the unions do that, I think, better than anybody in Southwest Virginia. And so I'm so glad we have representation from them. But I also love that after we do some brief introductions and rationale for these speakers, that we're also going to break away a little and talk to each other just for a while. So that kind of speaks to what we're trying to do here, provide different perspectives, but to get to know each other a little bit better as we look at our perspectives and hopefully work together toward the best resolution of the challenges we face. We have three of our speakers who are on the screen, and I guess if you're just zooming in and you're not a speaker, you want to make sure you're muted. But for those of you who are on the screen and are speakers, of course, you might, if you have a comment when we get to the question section, indicate it by raising a hand so I can see who you are and acknowledge you as somebody who will, when we do questions for the panel, want to speak. But we were going to begin by having each of you provide a quick 5-minute brief introduction, self-introduction of who you are and why you're here, basically. And we'll start with Scott Durbin. And I think Scott is online.
Hey there, I'm Scott Durbin. I'm a journeyman inside wireman. That means a union electrician who's mostly in construction, mostly in commercial and industrial construction and maintenance. At IBW 666, which is the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, the electricians union. My union's in Central Virginia, so I'm not actually in the jurisdiction where y'all are at all. I think that's actually I think Wytheville's covered by a local out of West Virginia, actually. I'm here to represent the union perspective as far as the building trades perspective, specifically. Maybe I'm mixed up. Should I just introduce myself, or should I give like a little bit of background as to the general union perspective on this kind of thing?
It's pretty much up to you, Scott, but we want an introduction and just sort of a broad understanding of your perspective, however you want to define it.
I presume that, like, I don't want to eat up everybody else's time too, so I presume I'll have time to expand out a little bit later. But my perspective is just someone who's been working in the building construction trades in Central Virginia for some years now. Understand that the stretch of 95 between Richmond and DC is the single largest concentration of data centers on the planet. That's the truth, This state has 30 to 40,000 workers doing that work as we sit here now, and that doesn't look like that's changing anytime soon. That concentration of workers is probably 40% union, roughly speaking. Very high for the South. I think we all know that. And because it is super majority migrants, almost certainly represents the single largest concentration of unionized migrant workers in the South. So that's just the bare perspective of where I'm coming from. Someone who's been like doing this work in the data centers, pulling in those giant cables, nailing those supports, up into the deck, over and over for year after year. And furthermore, I should say, he's certainly taken some time to familiarize myself with the broader issues around them. So when it comes around to me, I can speak to that as well. And I appreciate y'all inviting me here.
Thank you, Scott. Chuck Simpson is with us in the audience. Chuck, would you provide us an understanding of who you are and why you're here?
Well, you'll see in the brochure that I'm marked. Thank you for taking care of me, Brother Chris. Marked as a CWA representative. I am president of CWA Local 2204. We cover from Lee County, Tennessee, Kentucky border, all the way to Danville. From Danville, inside of Charlottesville, and over to Winchester. But I'm also president of the Western Virginia Labor Federation. There are 4 bodies in Virginia that do primarily the political and legislative work of the state AFL-CIO. And I'm president of that, and our office is based in Roanoke as well. We have affiliates from different unions. Christian UMWA is one of those, who work with us and are part of our delegates that help us decide where we're going and what we're doing and what we vote on, and bring issues to the table, whether they be political or legislative. Plus, if unions need our support, if they're in a contract fight, if they're in a bargaining fight, if they're in a collective bargaining fight that rolls into an informational picket, whatever we can do to go out and support our brothers and sisters, that's what we're going to do. The reason that I am here is to speak on the fact of what we're looking at as far as data center build out. We had a large discussion at one point in time about the build out that was being proposed in Wytheville. And I am not going to begrudge some of my fellow trade unionists who have that work, just like Brother Scott, that are involved in both the electrical work in building out centers, both involved in the plumbers and pipe fitters who are helping with construction, and also with the folks like Lyuna and laborers who may be also involved in those projects in cleanup and other grounds maintenance while those buildings are being constructed. But you'll notice, I have my shirt on, it says every vote counts. And that's what we need to migrate towards. There needs to be developed relationships with local elected officials. All politics is local. And when you have those relationships, you hopefully have a foot in the door so that you've got friends, whether they're on board of supervisors or on city council or on a school board or another elected body, that you know the minute you think things are going south, that you can pick up the phone and have a conversation directly with them to say, look, we don't like this, what's happening here, and explain to us. Plus, I would hope that that type of relationship would be reversed back so that those governing officials would say, oh, we're thinking about doing this, then let's make it transparent and put it out there so that everybody knows what's going on. Because we've all, trust me, as a union president, we've all got to be open for constructive criticism, no matter how harsh it might be. But give us all an opportunity to come to the table and have that discussion about where things are headed and what they're going towards. So again, I am more of an advocate about developing those relationships with elected officials and with other unions to make sure that we can work together collectively, because I don't want to jeopardize those jobs. There's a lot of immigrant jobs through Lyouna in the Shenandoah Valley that are doing work in Northern Virginia, specifically on AI build out and data center build out. But again, the impact to the community is where people feel a little bit lost because they don't have the opportunity to engage. And when you try to engage, sometimes it falls on deaf ear. So you need to be able to try to work and develop those relationships to make it happen, because again, those jobs are there. As I got reminded just the other day from a couple of my IBEW brothers, you know, we're putting our kids through school doing this type of work, and we're building towards our retirement, and we don't have that much trade work in Southwest Virginia that's union represented. I would love to see it, to have an opportunity to bring the trades here, have the build out of union organized jobs, grow the union percentage of jobs in Virginia, and give people who want to move into the trades the opportunity to work those jobs so that they can go sign up to be an apprentice. The apprenticeship can put them into the job so they earn while they learn, and then they become an integral part of that, because when they get in and earn while they learn, they have their benefits paid for and they have their retirement funded. So if they decide after 6 months or a year, hey, this isn't for me, then they can walk out of it and don't owe a dime, because everything's been covered by the trade group who's been training them. So I encourage everybody, when you get those opportunities, because politics is sometimes a painful issue, but we have to do it to make sure things work in our benefit. So that's why I'm here. And if anybody's got any questions after the fact, I'll be glad to speak to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Let's move on to Josh West, who's also in the room with us.
So I'm Josh, not Chris, but
Yeah, well, I said Chris.
if anybody's
Yeah,
gonna
Chris
call
on
me
the line.
anybody, Chris will be okay, he's my buddy. Okay, so I'm just picking.
I know.
So my name's Josh West, I'm the district rep for the United Mine Workers of America. I work in the Castlewood office in Castlewood, Virginia. I'm a little broader, I guess, as far as just not Virginia. I handle a lot of stuff in Virginia, but you know, District 17 is who I work for. So I cover Virginia, West Virginia, parts of Kentucky, Ohio, North Carolina, Tennessee. So we're kind of running a broad spectrum there. So when you talk about politics, I get all that. So we have to run for office every 5 years or so. But I'll just give you a little history on the mine workers. Some of you may or may not know. I don't know, you know, being up this far in Southwest Virginia, you may not know a whole lot about the mine workers. You may know a lot about it. But we was formed in Columbus, Ohio in 1890. There was a lot of immigrants that couldn't even speak the same language, but they come together to understand what they needed for fair representation and wages and safety. So, you know, that's what formed the United Mine Workers in 1890. There is a little more history I'll give you. Our president at the time, in 1935, which was John L. Lewis, and it's interesting history if you get into it. He actually formed the CIO, which is now the AFL-CIO. And the reason, you know, that he formed that was to organize millions of workers, skilled and unskilled, And that was in the auto industry, the rubber industry. So that's just a little history from the mine workers, but I'll kind of keep right on going with that. You know, the UMWA over the years has diversified. We're not just coal miners anymore. We represent healthcare workers, manufacturing, prisons. It all depends on which state you're in. You know, we're an international union, so we go all the way through over to Canada, so we represent a lot of diverse people. And we're always, you know, our main goal right now is to organize, and it should be every union's goal. But we must organize the unorganized. That's some more words from John L. Lewis, that every union should keep in the back of their mind. But our goal is to get out and organize. So if there's any places in Wytheville or in the area you want to organize, get a hold of me and Chuck, and we'll get you straightened out. We also have an associate membership that I always like to mention, and I know we've got some associate members in the crowd. So, you know, that's something you can do to be a part of our union, keep up with our politics and our union for $5 a month. So that's just something we always throw out when we're in meetings, but it's something great to do. So now, I guess I'll move on to why I'm really here. I like to give a little history so people know what we're about. But as far as data centers, now this is not Josh West's perspective, this is the UMWA's perspective. So the UMWA has some concerns about data centers, and you know, it's the amount of potentially unnecessary natural gas and other power generations that's coming online and displacing the remaining baseload coal power plants. I mean, that's one of our concerns that we have. It's affordable coal powered baseload power plants, you know, need to be maintained and updated, and somewhere in this transmission or whatever we do, as far as, you know, where we're moving as a country, where we're moving as a state, you know, we think coal needs to be a part of that. It's the cheapest way to have power. But you know, that's just kind of our perspective on the data centers. As far as AI, and I'll touch on it a little bit. I mean, actually, I think any union should be worried about AI. I mean, if it's something that's going to happen, that's going to take your jobs. Me and Chuck was talking earlier here. It's, you know, I've never seen a robot that's going to pay dues, and that's kind of what keeps unions going. So, you know, we need workers and we need people. So, you know, AI is something that really should scare any union. And that would be one of my as Josh concerns, I guess, is the data center. You know, what kind of data are we putting in here? What are we training? Are we training robots to take our jobs later on? I don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a concern that needs to be laid out on the table for everybody to actually consider when we're talking about exactly what kind of data center are we putting in the community? How is it going to affect the community? So that's kind of my perspective and my union's perspective, but I'll be glad to answer any questions, you know, when we get done here as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Josh. Brian King with RWA is on Zoom. Can you unmute? There we go. There we go.
How's it going?
Hi, Brian.
This is Brian from Roanoke. I'm rank and file member of the IMECWA Local 82162 out of Roanoke, Virginia. I'm also a member of the Roanoke Workers Assembly, Roanoke, Virginia, dedicated to organizing the unorganized and such things like that. I apologize if there's a specific question.
Well, no, not necessarily. I just wanted to make sure you feel comfortable with what you said. That's all that's important. We're just wanting to know who you are and maybe a little information about what you're hoping to contribute here.
Yeah, the Roanoke Workers Assembly, I think, made its point when it went to the West Virginia Water Authority meeting, one of the first ones that was public after they signed an NDA about the data center, about selling that land or utilization contract with the land up the bottom top. And the message we brought was that these proposals that are made, these NDAs that are signed, you know, I think the politicians are too cowardly to have them brought to referendums And if they ever were brought to referendums, they would obviously be rejected. They must be done in these closed deal, closed rooms, behind closed doors, or else the public would, reject them out of hand. And that speaks to both a lack of interest in what the public believes in these things, but also to a lack of trust in what the people believe as well, want done with their communities and land and resources. If these things are so good, economically viable, then that argument should be made in the public forum, much like we're doing right now. And if they are hidden away, you've already lost that fight. It doesn't matter how good of an argument you have if you hide behind those doors. The public is immediately going to distrust you. So that was a message we brought, and that was the message we left with. And obviously, it's not been taken up by any, thing. But that's what we call for. Is that these things, these are our resources, and if they're meant to be used, then they need to be. We need to be asked our consent at the end of the day. That's how we operate in our union. If the company wants to change something, they have to come to us and ask our consent first. That's the relationship we have. And it doesn't seem like that's the relationship that the public has with their elected officials.
Thank you, Brian. Next, we have in the room Andy Cagley, a community activist farmer and a Preserve With member.
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. Appreciate you. There's a lot we could talk about, and I really appreciate what I've heard so far. I mean, I understand the diversity and complexity of this issue, and as you said, or maybe you said, it could be the defining issue of our times. I mean, it really could be. So yeah, welcome to Wythe County. Along with Sherry, I'm a Wythe County resident. I've done a little bit of everything. I live on a family farm. I was a dairy farmer for 10 years. I was an elected official for 4 years. I ran a nonprofit for 30 some years. I retired and thought I was going to be writing a book, and woke up last December to an announcement that out this window, across the interstate, behind Pepsi in our industrial park, our county had signed behind an NDA, behind a project code name. We have Project Gradient. Julie's been dealing with Project Raspberry. That Project Gradient was signed last May with a performance agreement with a company out of Charlotte to build the first data center in Wythe County. A little measly one on 100 acres that was going to use maybe 250 megawatts of electricity. Astoundingly, the promise that they were only going to use 2,000 gallons of water. I heard a giggle. That engineering, we have yet to see it. I talked to DEQ today, and that engineering has not yet been submitted. It can be a closed loop system, and it might use less water, but it's going to use a whole lot of electricity. But like the speaker on the screen a moment ago, the issue really is the building or the dismantling of trust. When our elected officials met beginning in January of 25 to talk about this, it was always behind closed session. They came out, they didn't take any action. They started referencing Project Gradient publicly in March. None of us activists in the room, I see a half a dozen of us at least, who since December have been to about every meeting that's been held. But sadly, we didn't go to meetings when it would have been really helpful. We're wide open. And you also need to know that Wythe County has no land use protection. We have no zoning. We're one of 7.5 counties, Franklin County, a couple of Franklin County in the back. Franklin County is half zoned, but we're one of 7.5 counties in the state that are not zoned. So it's like we've rolled out the red carpet for these data center guys to come flowing downhill from Northern Virginia because land is cheaper. We have no land use protection. We've got abundance of electricity. We have two 765 kV power lines strung across Wythe County. They intersect over at Foster Falls. These are the biggest power lines in the country. And they're APCO, American Electric Power Company power lines. So they bring juice in from West Virginia and Ohio generation plants. So here we are. And then to make matters a little bit worse, in March we learned, because that red carpet from our Board of Supervisors was rolled out, that the second announcement was made, and you might have read about that in the Cardinal a couple weeks ago, that a company has secured a contract of land for those of you going north on 81 back home towards Roanoke. When you cross, right before you cross the Pulaski County line, if you look up, you'll see a 765 power line over your head. If you look to your right, you'll see a really nice old colonial looking mansion on the hill that's part of a 1,000-acre property that's now under contract to build a gigawatt data center. We don't know a thing about water for it. Same giggle. But we do know it's less than 2 miles from the New River. And that's the nightmare scenario that we need to be prepared for. There's no environmental work done on this site. It's just beginning right now. The site here in Wytheville in our industrial park, there's a ton of environmental work done, some of it kind of old, having to be refreshed with the Corps of Engineers. But the second data center, it's brand new, blank slate, and all that work is just now beginning. So here in Wythe County, I feel like, just to sort of tie a bow around the first part of this, we're the poster child for, I like to refer to what Ben Franklin says about the republic if we can keep it, the laissez-faire approach. Everything that's happening here is kind of inevitable. We have unfettered development in Northern Virginia seeping downhill. We have a large unencumbered source of fresh water that will be regulated, but in the current federal environment, you gotta wonder about what Washington's gonna concern or worry about. And in Richmond, we're all kind of scratching our heads about what's happening in Richmond. This emerging industrial complex, not enough state regulations. We couldn't even get additional regulations approved in the budget that was, I think, signed today in Richmond. And then, there's $1 trillion worth of investment being proposed for AI data centers in the last couple of years. And if you look at that curve, it goes straight up. And there was a really nice graph today of other investments, bubbles, the dot-com one of the early 2000s. You could talk about the tulip investments in Holland in the 1600s. You can talk about the railroads, you can talk about canals. They all went up and they crashed. This one's still going sky high, and the crash, for the pessimist in the room, is really, really, really scary. There are no guardrails in place for the internet. It should have been put in place in 1996 when the internet was evolving. We're paying the price for that today. And oh yeah, here locally, we don't have the granddaddy of regulation. We don't have zoning in place. So that's the sort of the perfect storm of where we live here in Wythe County and what we're working on. And I will be quiet and turn it back over to you, Dirk.
Thanks, Andy. John Peace with the Storage Data Center, and a farmer is with us online. John, can you unmute?
There we go. There we go. Yeah, my name's John Peace. I live in Wise County. I live on a family dairy farm, not dairy anymore, but family farm in Clinchhaven Farms in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. One of the reasons Mike asked me to be on this panel, a couple of reasons. By happenstance, my second career, I've become a syndicated feature writer and in various newspapers and magazines, and I'm a member of a union. I'm a union member, National Writers Union. And Josh, you're sitting there. My ancestors were all UMWA. Now, y'all get to wear the rough-looking camo jackets. The National Writers Union, we carry around pens and write stories. Not quite as rough and tumble as my ancestors, but anyway. And the second reason Mike asked me to be on this panel was a little over 15 years ago. I'm a former chairman of the Wise County Board of Supervisors. Now, I actively campaigned and promoted to do 2 economic development projects. One was the Recruiter Data Center to Wise County, and the second one was a coal-fired electrical power plant. And we got both of them over the time. Now, here's the thing. 15 years ago, AI data centers didn't exist. So what we recruited was what they call a Tier 5 high security data center. And it sits in Wise, Virginia today, Mineral Gap Data Center. And when my first year on the board, and the reason why these economic development projects were so important, and this is why Mike wanted me to talk about why do counties look at these projects. My first year being chairman, I was 33 years old, we were dead broke. We were looking at massive layoffs in the school system, social services, health department, law enforcement, because of our budget situation. And today, Wise County is facing the same budget problems 15, 20 years later that we solved back then. Same problem. We have about an $8 million deficit in the budget. And of course now, the current Board of Supervisors are looking at AI data centers, and we've got some huge things in the newspapers. Some of them involve SMR nuclear reactors to power them. And so I'm not comparing apples to apples to what we recruited. It's not an AI data center. Now it uses massive amounts of electricity. And Josh, got to let you know, it uses 100% coal-fired electric power coming out of Kentucky Utilities. So we were in a little bit of a unique situation in Wise County as far as our electrical grid, because where we used to have hundreds of coal mines, we had an infrastructure that's overbuilt for residential. And where we've lost coal mines, unfortunately, where we've lost coal mines, we have plenty of infrastructure to feed a data center and all that. So, happy to be part of the discussion. If you got questions, about as far as why counties look at this. I was also a 4-year member of the Virginia Coalfield Economic Development Authority. And here's the last thing I'll leave everybody with. We recruited a data center and did not offer one single tax incentive, and we landed one. And so that's a big difference where they kind of offer all these incentives, and we're a prime example of you don't have to do that. But anyway, I'll leave it at that and appreciate being here.
Thanks, John. Julie Bivens with the Southwest Virginia Data something transparency. So
Yes.
Data Center Transparency.
You almost got it there.
Is with us in the room. Julie, take it away.
Sure. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Julie Bivens. I live in Roanoke City. I really appreciate being here and hearing everybody's perspectives. I love that we are having this conversation. It's also a little intimidating because I helped start this group. It's the Southwest Virginia Data Center Transparency Alliance. It is a brand new group. We just kind of started this past September, really, the end of September, in response to Project Raspberry, which is the Google data center that is proposed or being planned in Wautauta County. That was announced a year ago in June. My background's in social work, and so, I work with people mostly on an individual basis. I've worked in a lot of systems as well, dysfunctional systems. I consider myself a pretty informed citizen overall, and so when I heard about this project being announced last June, there was immediately something in me that was just like, oh, this is not okay, or like how can I find people around me who can help us figure out what's going on. I grew up in the Roanoke area, and then I've lived in various places in Virginia, and moved back there at the end of 2024. And part of the reason that we moved back to Roanoke is because we love the mountains, and we love the outdoors, and we love the natural resources here, like in all of Southwest Virginia. So Yeah, so anyways, that's just kind of a little bit of background of how I got involved in this. Again, just kind of like, and I don't remember exactly how, but somehow AI data centers were on my radar. I want to say it's because of Elon Musk's XAI in Memphis, which has been wreaking havoc there. I think I heard about that one, which is very different. But anyways, so yeah, I heard about this project. I was reaching out online, places like Reddit and stuff like that, trying to reach out to local groups, and wasn't really finding a whole lot. Eventually connected with Piedmont Environmental Council, who were doing a ton in that region of the state around just lots of information on data centers, and eventually was connected with a couple other people from the Roanoke area who had also reached out to them. And so anyways, we started from there. So we are kind of this brand new group, but yeah, we represent the community and community concerns. And being in Roanoke City, this data center is being allotted 2 to 8 million gallons of water a day from our municipal drinking water supply, which is Roanoke County, Franklin County, Botetourt County. So that was one of the biggest concerns. And Brian, who spoke earlier and is also in Roanoke, we connected with ROA, with his group ROA, pretty early on at the Water Authority, and we were all speaking there. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so that was kind of the main thing that we were all very focused on at first. We, fortunately we were able to host a Q&A with our Water Authority Executive Director at the beginning of this year, which, we felt was, felt a little promising that like, oh yay, somebody's listening to us and like wants to engage, with our concerns. And it didn't end up feeling that way in the end. I think a lot of us didn't really feel like our questions were really answered, which continues to be the case now, a year later. And there's still a lot of questions around, like all these other AI data centers, the energy use. There's still a lot of questions about the water use. It's affecting our how soon and where our future regional water supply will come from. There were a ton of incentives given to Google. And I guess I shouldn't say a ton, but I will say a number of incentives that Botetourt County gave Google. Also had worked under a lot of NDAs, as did the Water Authority. But yeah, some of the incentives were like real estate discount. The Google data center is on 312 acres in an industrial area in Botetourt, but the area is, right beside neighborhoods, right beside a school, right beside like several recreational areas. There's some really important historical things there as well, and wetlands. So anyways, they were given a real estate discount. They were given a cap on the business personal property tax. There's in their performance agreement, they agreed to fast track permits within the county. So, a lot of things that we don't really feel like a $1 trillion company really deserves. So I won't get into all the details there either, but our focus right now is on opposing this project in Botetourt. And the reason that we're opposing it is because of like what a lot of people have brought up already, right? The transparency issue, the fact that all of this was put into place before the project was even announced. And I say all of this was put into place, the performance agreements were signed and the land was bought and all of that. But yet, again, the details, there's so many questions about the details of just how much, again, around the water, around energy, that really just make it seem like things weren't really thought through very well. And just overall, the erosion of trust between local government and the community. We feel like we've really tried to engage Botetourt Board of Supervisors. You know, people show up every single month. We have rallies there every single month. We continue to show up at the Water Authority. And they had a Google Fair earlier this month where Google came and had their little presentation boards for us and, you know, told us a couple of things here and there, but that's not engagement. That's not, you know, listening to our concerns and really addressing those and having a say in things and, you know, everything that everyone's mentioned already. So yeah, it feels like we're getting talked at, honestly. So anyways, that's our group's main focus right now. We are also connecting like regionally with county, you know, Wise. There's in some other counties right around Roanoke. We're also trying to get on the zoning bandwagon to know what's going on there to try to prevent, you know, unregulated data centers, AI data centers from moving in. And again, that's kind of like short term, yes, we are opposing these things, and that is because they are unregulated, because there is no, you know, oversight on these projects. You know, there's no like mitigation for damage to communities. So those are the reasons that we're doing that. We think this needs to slow down so that things can be well thought out. Yeah, it just kind of mirrors what's going on with AI itself, the whole rollout of these things. So, yeah.
Thanks, Julie. Andy wants the floor real quick.
Yeah, so just to tie back what John said about Wise County, our Board of Supervisors this morning approved a budget today of $118 million. They had a deficit. They didn't raise the taxes. They chose to borrow from their reserves about $4 million to balance the budget. From the first data center, they're going to earn $10 million as a machinery and tools tax beginning about 2028. The second data center down at the Pulaski County line is 4 times bigger, so it will generate 40 to 50 million in annual machinery and tools tax plus real estate tax. So there's about $50 to $60 million of new tax revenue, which is half of the county budget today. So that's the reason why these county local elected officials are all on board about bringing these things in, because it's going to balance the budget. Our board has even said we can cut our real estate taxes in half, not build new schools, not pay our teachers, but cut our real estate and tax. So that's kind of what we're up against. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Now we need to move into the neighbor portion of this. I want to say that what I'm taking away from this is the fact that there needs to be more communication, and that we're living with probably the, I think it was said, the most significant challenge of our time. And with that, then, how do we want to engage more people, understanding that everything is moving quickly and this is a huge challenge for us? So what I want you all to do is to think about who's in this room and challenge yourself to talk with that, a person who you think may have a different perspective on this, or somebody you just don't know, and do it in a positive, friendly way. In church, when we do this, we call it giving a sign of the peace, something akin to that. But ask yourselves and the persons with whom you're speaking, how do we engage more people with this discussion, and what is it that they need to know? So we'll spend about 10 minutes trying to ask and answer that and other questions that you may have while you're all productive and enjoyable for you. We're gonna ask questions here of our panelists. But first this is not what I've been asked to do, but I do want to see if there's one person who had any discussion about where we go and how we engage more people on this topic in our communities. Anybody have a chance to discuss that? Or anybody have any thoughts about that? That's okay.
You mentioned that we're in a media
Desert.
yes, thank you. And I really have been giving that thought as I listen to everyone and feeling like that's a lost opportunity for us. how can we work to change that? So,
Yeah,
just-
that's a good point. And one more, you had a thought.
Excuse me, what we done, or what we're doing in Pulaski, is we're canvassing, and we're going door to door. And we fixed up flyers, and we're, telling people when we go to the doors, what is going on, and I mean 95%, maybe 99% of the people in our county, they don't even know what's going on. I mean, I found out, so I called a real estate lady, a friend of mine, and so she got on board. So then we got another group going, so we have probably around 30 some that's in our group, and then I met up with Danny Goad from Botetourt. I was down there protesting with you all, and I was out on the road, and so we done that. But then we're having our own meetings. We have a meeting twice a month, and we've got it online. We've got our group, and we've got it put it online where people can show up. And then we go to every Board of Supervisors meeting. But we're being cut down like, I don't know what. If you mention it, you've got 3 minutes, and that's all you get. And if you mention any of their names, the Board of Supervisors names, they tell you, your time's up right then. Or either they'll tell you, she's the chairman, sit down and shut up. Oh yeah, I said, she hadn't told me yet. But she said, sit down and shut up. Because they know they've been caught.
Okay, well, thank you both
Yeah.
for that information. I just think it's interesting to know when you have people who are concerned about an issue, and the frustration they often feel, regardless of their perspective, is that they sort of are bearing the burden alone. And the need for any challenge that we have, and I teach this to students, is that we need to communicate. Whatever our perspective, the only way we work through a challenge and arrive at a solution is if we're shedding light on it and we all understand it before the problem gets out of hand. And because this seems to be a challenge or an opportunity that is moving ahead very quickly, we have a citizenry who in many ways is being left behind, which is the case for many, on many issues. But in this one, if it is, as we say, the most important issue of our time, that seems to accelerate our need for action and engagement with other people in our community. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll move to our panel to talk about some questions. And I'm going to let you all chime in or raise your hand. Those of you who are online, are they able to raise their hand online if they want to speak to a question? Okay.
Yeah, we've been seeing the emojis pop up, so probably.
All right, so those panelists who are online, you can raise your hand using the react function on Zoom. And you also have been given the ability generally to unmute. So go ahead, and if you have a response to this question, we've only got about 6 questions or so, and we only have about 40 minutes to answer them. So let's begin with the first one. Now that you've heard each other's perspectives and concerns, have you heard things that broaden your thoughts or helped define your position? I'll repeat that. Now that you've heard each other's perspectives and concerns, have you heard things that broaden your thoughts or helped define your position, or maybe refine your position? Anybody want to take that on?
I was surprised that the 2 union representatives are here and what each of them had to share. So I think my perspective broadened.
Well, thank you for that, but of course this is for our panelists.
Sorry.
But thank you.
Nobody?
I don't care to comment. I would say that anytime you get in a group and you have people that talk, you're definitely gonna hear different perspectives. You're gonna hear different things. Whether you're for it or against it, you're gonna hear both sides. And it's good to hear both sides. Like I said, whether you're for it or against it, it's really good to hear both sides. But I would encourage everybody, from a union standpoint, to get involved. Whichever side you're on, get involved, pick a side. You know, there's a whole song there, which side are you on? But, you know, get involved, and whichever side you're on, stand up for it and protest. You know, there's such thing as civil disobedience, whether you want it or whether you don't. But get involved. That would be my perspective, that I've learned from the night. You know, the more people you get involved, the better off you are.
Yes. Hey, Andy.
And I would say the thing that's real obvious is, from the conversation, thank you, Julie, is the need for, you know, we're all trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm talking to some folks from Carroll County, and talking to Roanoke, and talking to Wise County, and, you know, we're all kind of up against the same thing. And we're all doing this within the confines of our local elected officials. And if there's gonna be strength in numbers, we need to figure out how to build that organization between Roanoke and Botetourt and Wise and Carroll and whatever. And then that's the subpart of the locally elected officials. We need people running for office. This is the defining moment of our times, and there's other things that are sort of helping to define our times, happening in Washington or not happening in Washington. Then, you know, this populist swell of people becoming more interested and more angry, hopefully will generate better elected officials.
All right, we'll have time for one more response. Scott online. Go ahead.
If there's something that I want to make sure that I'm putting out as far as the position goes, I keep hearing folks talk about two sides, and I really think that's a bad way to look at it. Because that's saying that there's these two kind of maximalist positions, right? And maybe there are. Maybe there's people in there that think that, like, the 30 or 40,000 folks earning decent livings, building and maintaining data centers in this state should be put out of work tomorrow. But I don't think there's any folks that think. I don't think that, right? I don't think that. At the same time, I also, and maybe there are folks who also think that, like, there should, that, well, maybe the companies that build, maybe some of the people that own the companies that build data centers think this, but let's be frank, there's not that many of them folks. Think that there should be this sort of completely free regulatory environment where everything should just be scythed down to the earth, and nothing but data centers from here to the Canadian border and all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. But I don't think there's that many of them folks either. I think most of us are somewhere here in the middle. Even my union has a position that's somewhere in the middle. Well, like, we actually, this is a position paper of the IBW, the union that is primarily, that is organizing the most folks out there doing this work. We believe there should be reasonable regulations around water and around generation of electricity. Look, I'm right here in Richmond. My electricity bill has doubled in the last 2 years. And I know that's because of data centers. I'm not a fool, you know. And coming from my own perspective, just as somebody out here in the world, I'm doing this work, I'm part of the community myself. And that's a fact for every single person involved in this work too. There are environmental impacts. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you folks and say there aren't, you know. Now, do those environmental impacts add up to something like Radford? Do those environmental impacts add up to something like the complex of chemical plants down 95, clustered around Petersburg and Hopewell over here in Central Virginia? I don't think so. But there are real environmental impacts which need to be addressed in a reasonable way if this goes forward at all. But I just want to understand that from the perspective of the worker, we think those jobs should be union. We think if any of this build out happens, it should be done in a well-regulated way, which doesn't proceed at this pace, which is obviously y'all are very angry about the way you've been treated. And some of it sounds, I mean, I'll admit the audio is not great, so I'm not catching everything, but some of it sounds pretty justified from my perspective. You know, I'm speaking as a guy. I'm not speaking the perspective of my union. But understand that over here, there's the folks doing the work, you know? And it's hard for us to hear a position which is being portrayed that there's just two sides with maximalist positions that kind of want to destroy each other. I know that's not true. You know, we may not be neighbors. I'm a few hours away in Richmond, but we're in the same state and we're not that far away.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Well, I'm gonna move on to the next question. John, I know you've got your hand raised, but for the sake of time and getting to as many of these questions as possible, I'd like to move on. If there's a way to move your comments into this next one, it might be helpful, because the question is, what's for union, it's a union question, what specific language in your collective bargaining agreement protects against automation takeover? So, yeah, Chuck.
With the Verizon agreement, I have different agreements that I represent in my logo. There we go, sorry. I thought I was loud enough about it. But that means people online can't hear me. With my Verizon contract, which is where I'm employed, we have language that does a couple things. One is there are job security agreements that we have negotiated based on the amount of work that our people are handling in different groups. Not everybody, but certain work groups, to say you cannot come in here and say you're gonna lay this work group off, or part of them, because you're not meeting the percentage of work that they should be getting to start with. We also have, at the time that the company decides, it's never about loss of work anymore, it's all about money. So if they decide that they want to make the changes to limit that cost of operations, they may very well, at a vice presidential or director level, come in and say, we need to downsize by X amount of people, and we're gonna offer this buyout to these folks. And one of the buyouts is real nice. The other buyout's okay, but one of them is really, really nice. And when they throw it out there into certain work groups, there will be people who will take the application and put it in, and 9 times out of 10, the company will say, well, we talked like we only wanted 2, but we'll take all 4 of you that applied. So that's a better opportunity as well to give people a little incentive boost, especially for people who've got 30 years of service, because if they take the accelerated buyout, they could walk away with 30 years of service and an additional $120,000 above and beyond their pension or their 401k. And then the other thing is technology advancement, which falls right in here with AI. Anytime, and I just had a grievance on this today, anytime that the company's proposing to use any type of automated system, they are obligated to come to the union and have the discussion about what they're doing, what it's going to do, and how it's going to be implemented. And they attempted to do this with an automated intelligence system in handling stuff that runs work to the technicians whenever there's damage in the field. Car hits a pole, tears the line down, things of that nature. And they got so much grief over it from us. And they figured out it wasn't doing what they thought it was going to do. They backed away from it, but that language still stays. If automation is going to cause you to take work away or shift work, and potentially maybe cause either a layoff or a buyout, you need to come to us first and have that discussion so we can at least talk about it. And that's part of the situation we're talking about with local governing bodies, because that's what needs to happen as well. But, you know, you don't have a contract with your board of supervisors, so that's another deal.
Thanks, Jack. Well, Brian has his hand raised. Can you unmute Brian?
So I work in military manufacturing. Work at the 18162 covers the night vision plant up in Hollands, which is north of Roanoke. Being in a military manufacturer, they generally have not sought to adopt any AI in their production lines, mainly due to the insecurity, like the security issues involved with AI. I think they might have been actually directed by the DoD not to adopt any of those things. So in that way, we're safe from that, but as always, automation is always moving over the corner in any kind of industrial manufacturing process. But in our contract, we don't generally have any specific language about it. We have language where supervisors aren't allowed to do our work, but generally we rely on case law from the NLRB in regards to protecting our bargaining unit and maintaining its size and maintaining it from attacks from subcontracting and such. A lot to do with what Chuck was saying about there has to be discussions, there has to be reasons given, there has to be bargaining around it. And as I said, a lot of those things are governed by case law from the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, which is why to the politicians in the room, or hopeful politicians, it's very important that it's a very important issue to the unions that we protect the NLRB, the NLRA, and protect make sure the right people get on that board, because otherwise we start slipping into that case law being eroded very quickly, as we've seen in the past two Republican administrations.
Okay, and Scott has his hand raised. Let's take one more answer, Scott.
Whoa, sorry. I thought I closed it. Mine will be real quick. They haven't figured out a way to make an AI construction worker yet, but I'll worry about it when they get to there.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to the next question, which relates to agriculture and the environment. And from what you all know about data centers, is the local topography and drainage pattern, what is the local topography and drainage pattern for these centers, and will it alter to affect adjacent farmlands due to construction? Is anybody?
Well, I'm an active farmer and dealing with the drought, and
Where's your one?
I'm an active farmer with dealing with a drought. We've got less than half the rain over the last 18 months than we normally do. Wells are 60 feet lower on the water table, according to a well driller that I know, and so that's an issue. When you take 1,000 acres, like up here at the Appalachia County line, you're going to start grading it. You're going to impact some springs. You're going to impact drainage into the New River. But then you're going to also be doing a lot of blasting, and that's going to impact wells or in the neighborhood, Wytheville County as well as the Pulaski County side. So anytime you do any blasting, you're going to impact the water table and how it flows through wells and springs. But there's a really fascinating subset here that's I think begins to explain why data centers are moving from Northern Virginia to south side and southwest. Almost all these guys have to get a permit from DEQ to discharge nutrients into the water. Our guy right across the interstate here is right now trying to buy a nutrient credit permit from through DEQ, because it's easier for that company to buy somebody else's improvement. So if I were a farmer and I put in mitigation, I build fences around the water and I keep the cows out of the water, I'm improving the environment. If I'm a polluter, it's easier for me to buy a credit than to fix on site my problem. The way the DEQ market and laws for nutrient credits read, you've got to buy that credit from the same watershed. So just imagine Northern Virginia, the Potomac watershed up there, they've probably exhausted their credits. There are not many farmers left, there are not many places to offer those credits. Out here in Southwest Virginia, there are all kinds of credits available. And they have to be sold to a polluter in the same watershed. So I think my theory is, and we've talked about this with some of your friends in Botetourt, you're a different watershed, the Roanoke River watershed or the James River watershed. But if we pay attention to the watershed, and farmers in general, I'm going to make a general statement here, farmers in general are opposed to data centers because of the land and the water, and also electricity. If we get farmers on board to say, I'm not going to sell any credit that I might have to that data center polluter, that's going to make it harder for them.
Are there any other responses to that question? If not, let's go on to this one, which is a general data question. How often are generators tested at data centers, and what does it impact with regard to air quality and pollution? Does anybody have intel on that?
I had to look this up a little bit. I mean, as I have had to with everything, right, in the past year, because again, this is all new to me. I'm not an expert by any means, but you know, this has kind of been part of the process of, what are we talking about here, right? And I wanna think critically about it, and I wanna have good information. You know, it's easy to get into just feeling outraged, and you can get addicted to that and go down a lot of misinformation. So definitely trying to not do that in our work. So anyways, yeah, we've, again, with the data center in Botetourt that we're working with, we really haven't gotten any information, as far as I know, on backup diesel generators. But what we know from similar projects throughout the state is that so this data center will use up to 300 megawatts of electricity, and so it should have hundreds of diesel generators for its backup power. There's like 2 to 4 megawatts each, I think is what they provide, and they normally have like way more than is actually needed there. But yeah, from what I have read, they're typically tested. There's testing requirements both monthly and annually. Monthly requirements are that they're tested at least 30 minutes at 30% capacity, and annually at least 90 minutes at 50% and 75% capacity. So those are requirements. The air permits that they have to get do limit generator operation to a certain number of hours per year. But again, from what I've read, Virginia DEQ has like very loose terms for what emergency use is. I see a lot of nodding heads. Yeah, and so if there's, you know, for instance, if there's a planned outage notification that's less than 14 days, that's considered an emergency, so they can go ahead and use the diesel generators. For short-term grid disturbances, so that's like, you know, again, like lights flickering or that type of thing. Data centers are very sensitive to those minor disturbances. A lot of times they'll have to disconnect from the grid and then switch to generators, and they can switch to those for like hours at a time, and none of that is considered emergency use. So they say that these diesel generators are for emergency use only, but what that actually means is like a very, very broad. So, and it is the diesel generators that are typically the largest source of air pollution at a data center. From what I've read too, the reason that they use diesel is because they're standardized, they're easy to get, they're kind of quick to set up. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay. But yeah, they there's a lot of pollutants that are associated with them. Diesel exhaust is known to harm health, you know, links to lung cancer risks, cardiovascular disease, asthma, and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you much, Julie. We have a hand coming up here from Scott. Scott, could you participate?
Yeah. As far as the numbers, as far as the frequency of testing, everything that she just said was about correct. I mean, that's what they are is basically a modified chip or train engine, diesel engine. You know. Each one uses like 15 to 20 times as much diesel per hour as an average semi does. Usually end up being run something like 50 to 100 hours per year per generator. So the kind of the math I do in my head is that each diesel generator on site for these backup generators, and I've installed a lot of them, uses the equivalent of 750, I just did the math right here while you're waiting, does 750 to 2,000, the equivalent of 750 to 2,000 hours of running a semi-truck per year. Which is, I mean, it's not nothing, that's for damn sure, it's not nothing. But also, the thing I think about, that number seems so large, and then I look at, well, I guess it'd be 81 in y'all's case. I look at 64 down the road from me, and I think of how many semis are running down that road at a given time. And I do wonder how much CO2 generation, if I compare it to just the average, you know, interstate mile, and I don't have any good numbers for that, but I do wonder how different those numbers are.
Thank you, Scott.
And a question for Scott maybe. Question for Scott is, I assume it's more efficient for the data center operator to use the diesel than it is electricity?
Scott, are you still there? Oh, he's still there. Scott, did you hear that?
He's muted.
I mean, if DEQ is giving the operators the permission to use emergency diesel more often, I'm assuming that's because it's more efficient for the operator to buy diesel than to buy electricity. And I don't know the answer to that.
They're working on it.
Okay, we got that straight now. No, that's not the case at all.
Okay.
They're just backup generators. That would be wildly financially irresponsible on the part of the data center operators. They're just backup. The least expensive way for them to get power is to buy it off the grid.
Thanks, Scott. Let's move on to our next question, which is about combined effort. Are there active local projects utilizing the data center's waste heat for greenhouses or aquaculture? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Norway, I think, is doing something.
Yeah, I came across, actually there was a bill that was just passed in this General Assembly where they are working with the Department of Energy on forming a work group to kind of look at this. So hopefully we'll get more information on some ideas around that. They're supposed to, this working group is supposed to present something by the beginning of September on it, so that will be interesting to see. I did also come across a agency in Nova, I believe, called Evergreen Energy. They're looking at taking some data center waste energy to, it sounds like use as heating for neighboring communities or something like that. But anyway, so it sounds like there's some people trying to think creatively on this kind of stuff. And again, like it sounds like there's a lot of technology out there that is not being implemented yet.
Thanks, Julie. Anybody else want to respond to that? If not, we have a little time. I want to go back to John Peace, who had a response, if he still has one, he wanted to give to our first question about if others have a perspective, concerns based on what they heard.
He's muted.
Hang on, John.
John, can you hear? Can you? You froze.
Southwest Virginia's been waiting all this time. He's probably still going.
You froze out, John. If you want to add something to the chat, maybe.
There we go. Be back. He's muted again.
He's saying you might.
There we go. I want to kind of jump back to Jim, and excuse me for not remembering the name from Wytheville County, talking about these projects being so far along before the public even knew. Now, I'm not defending local county boards. I don't know Wytheville County, but I'm going to give you, for example, Wise County. 15 years ago, when I first mentioned the word data center on getting money for a climatology report, I had 3 different reporters and 2 TV news reporters wanting to interview me about what I meant by data center, what you were looking at. And nowadays, we live in such a newspaper desert in rural counties all throughout Virginia. Give you, for example, our last Board of Supervisor meeting on tax rates and stuff had 300 people in attendance and lasted almost 4 hours, and there was not a single newspaper reporter even in the room. And the problem in these rural counties and these planning commissions, Lenawisco, going up the road to Cumberland Plateau, They don't have press people to release information. They just release what's legally binding to them, which is usually a notice of a meeting. And if nobody shows up for that meeting, nobody shows up, no reporters, that they just go on as business as usual. Now, I'm not defending that, but that's just the difference. Put it this way, this lack of information and this kind of being caught off guard wouldn't have happened 15 years ago, because the simple fact of how many news reporters we used to have that would attend every meeting, planning commission, economic development meetings, to get this information out to the public. And that does not happen today, because first of all, we don't have local newspapers in many cases, and we definitely don't have local newspaper reporters or TV reporters covering these meetings. So just kind of end up that one.
Very good point, John. Thank you so much for making it. That's all the time we have, but you are invited to remain here and carry on this conversation. We have until 8 p.m. So I invite you to do that. Those of you who are online, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this moment as much as you can be, especially to our speakers who are online, but also our panelists here in the room. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Mike has something to say. This is all Dirk's fault that you have to listen to me. All right, thank you all for coming. And the idea here is to create a community, to create a space for these discussions like this that needs to build and grow and mature. And it needs to remain calm and clear, and that's what everybody did tonight. It's a beautiful thing to be able to hear differing perspectives on some very, very challenging information, right? It's a hard conversation, but we've just started it, right? We're just all starting to see the different perspectives. And what I think is one of the most interesting parts of this is that, you know, what Julie has pulled together and her team has pulled together is the nascent network that can help to serve this conversation, to help to pull it forward, right? We want to have the perspective all the way from Wise and Lee, all the way up to Nova, right? We've got to all come together because we're facing the same issue. It's transparency, it's a lack of public officials understanding that people are organized, it's a lack of organization of those people coming together. And there's nothing wrong with coming across county lines to show your support to somebody else where it's happening, right? And that's one of the things that we were really trying to do tonight, why we wanted to have the Zoom as well, because we wanted to have our friends from Lee Penitentiary 1405 who've had their rights restricted and their contract null and voided by the federal government. We want to make sure that everybody knows that you can have your voice in this group, you can have your voice with all these folks, you can learn tremendous amount from the organized labor, because they know how to get this stuff done. They've been doing it, right? So they're your friends. And just in the same way, the new forming activist groups and the protest groups, you can learn a lot from your union neighbors, but also the unions can really bring people together and show you how to rally, right? So walk away with that knowledge and walk away with that perspective. It's not just about the jobs in one place, it's not just about the environment in another place. It's about all the pieces that fit together that actually form Southwest Virginia, right? So we need each other, we need to show up together, and we need to support each other. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a rally there. Dirk always does this to me. So thank you all very much.